second of 3 USDA data products legislative briefings. My name is Joe Parsons. I serve as Director of Methodology and Chair of the Agricultural Statistics Board at USDA's National Ag Statistics Service. These briefings grew out of an idea that legislative staff, as key customers of agricultural statistics, might find value in the briefings about the vast data assets at USDA, how to access them, and how to find assistance if needed. We're excited to bring this briefing series to you today. USDA has a vast portfolio and wide and varied assets. We won't be able to do justice to all the data assets, but we want to highlight a few of these key data assets and perhaps give you some ideas for how to effectively use these public goods for informing policy. We appreciate that your time is valuable, so we'll attempt to stay on schedule. We have 2 speakers today, Mr. Jason Carwall of the Agricultural Marketing Service and Mr. Patrick Packnett of the Foreign Agriculture Service. We very much welcome your questions, but ask that you hold them to the end of the presentations, or we welcome you to put them in the chat as you think of them. My colleague, Marissa Ruber, is putting a link in the chat to the location where you may find the recordings of our previous session, highlighting NASS, ERS, and World Board. Recordings of this session and copies of the slides will be populated to the site. We expect to populate the link with the recordings from this session later this afternoon. With that, I'd like to introduce our speakers and get underway. Mr. Jason Carwall is an agricultural marketing specialist with USDA's Agricultural Marketing Service. He is currently the lead subject matter expert on the My Market News project and works closely with team leaders across 4 different AMS commodity news programs: livestock and poultry, dairy, specialty crops, and cotton tobacco. Prior to this role, Mr. Carwall served as an assistant field chief with the AMS Livestock, Poultry, and Grain Market News and has over 23 years of market reporting experience. Mr. Carwall holds a BS in agricultural business and a master's of public administration. Mr. Patrick Packnett was officially appointed Deputy Administrator of Global Market Analysis Program Area, GMA, of the Foreign Agricultural Service, FAS, in January of 2020 after serving in an acting capacity since February of 2017. He began his career with USDA's Agricultural Marketing Service and since joining FAS in 1991 has served in a variety of analytical positions. He completed USDA's Senior Executive Service Candidate Development Program through American University's Key Executive Leadership Program in 2013. He is from Norwood, Louisiana, and studied agricultural economics at Alcorn State University. Welcome all, and with that, I'll turn it over to our first speaker, Mr. Jason Carwall from AMS. Jason.
Thank you, Joe. And I also want to thank everyone for joining us today. As Joe said, I'll be speaking about the Agricultural Marketing Service today and some of the specific marketing data that we do provide. The Agricultural Marketing Service administers programs that create domestic and international marketing opportunities for agricultural producers and also provides the agricultural industry with service that ensures the quality and availability of wholesome food for consumers in the US and across the world. AMS provides all the services you see listed here on this slide through 10 different commodity programs within the agency. But today I'll be specifically speaking about one of AMS's market research and analysis services, which is USDA Market News. I will be providing some background on market news and the information and services that we provide. I will also be quickly going through some examples of how our customers access some of the data sets that we release. For over 100 years, Market News has provided free, unbiased price and sales information to farmers and ranchers and businesses across the globe. This is done through 4 specific AMS programs representing cotton and tobacco, dairy and milk products, fruits, vegetables, and specialty crops, and livestock, poultry, and grain commodities. Market News does this by collecting and analyzing time-sensitive, commodity-specific information at local, regional, national, and international levels to help promote efficient and orderly marketing. Market News currently has over 1,500 different market reports and data sets that are updated over 2,000 times per week. These data sets include information on price, volume, quality, condition, and other relevant information on agricultural products in specific markets and marketing areas. These data sets can be updated one or multiple times per day, weekly, monthly, annually, and even seasonally, depending on the data that is represented and the market information that is available to market news at the time of release. This market information is collected through daily contact and interaction between our trained market reporters and our industry partners. These contact interactions include verification with both buyers and sellers involved in transactions to ensure the information that is being collected is valid. Other contacts for market information include marketing boards and associations, state and federal agencies, and many international cooperators. The information that market news releases is disseminated directly to users at no cost through specific websites, publicly available APIs, personal contact with our staff, and it is further disseminated through numerous secondary disseminators. These secondary disseminators can include news organizations, print and web media, colleges, universities, and private market analysts. The customers of market news are the millions of individuals who benefit from the public good service that we provide. Throughout the marketing chain, a great many farmers and other businesses benefit from the access to market information in reports provided by market news from market news reporters across the country. Market news reports serve interested parties at all levels of trade, from producer to the consumer, using uniform technology and grades that allow producers and purchasers to realistically compare prices, trends, supply and demand from day to day and from market to market across the country. Secondly, users of market news information include government agencies, private firms associated with or affected by covered commodities, such as processors, distributors, retailers, restaurants, consultants, forecasters, and financial institutions. One of the many advantages that market news service provides is to ensure that no marketing group is disadvantaged by the lack of viable market information. In the absence of this service, individuals within the market structure who can afford private collection of market news information would be in a stronger competitive position than those with fewer resources. Market news provides a service that can be utilized by everyone within the marketplace. Market news information helps bring stability and transparency to the marketplace by enabling buyers and sellers to determine market value based on the attributes of the agricultural commodities being traded and not the absence, unavailability, or imbalance of market information. The existence of market news ensures free and full access to current, reliable, and unbiased market information for all participants and assists in the orderly marketing of agricultural products and in the makes market conditions more competitive. Market news currently provides information under two specific categories. These categories are mandatory reporting and voluntary reporting. The mandatory reporting provided by market news is authorized under the Livestock Mandatory Reporting Act that was first established in 1999 and was developed to facilitate open and transparent price discovery and provide all market participants, both large and small, with comparable levels of market information for slaughter cattle, swine, sheep, boxed beef, lamb meat, wholesale pork, and dairy products. This act requires packers and handlers of a certain size to report information to AMS related to the purchase and sales of these specific agricultural commodities. These transactions are transmitted electronically to market news, and then trained market news staff use a customized IT system to analyze the data and aggregate the data to create market reports that are released at specific times during the day. Throughout the submission process, market news reporters are in contact with entities that are submitting this data to ensure accuracy and coverage. There can be between 30,000 and 40,000 different mandatory transactions submitted in a given day through this system. That data is used by market news to provide regular updates to over 150 different market reports and data sets. USDA Market News makes these reports and data sets available to the public through the most recent editions of market reports that are available on the AMS website and through downloadable data sets that users can get to through a specific website called USDA Data Mart. Market News also has 2 different publicly available APIs for the mandatory data that are available for customers to access this information. Voluntary price reporting has been around for many more years than a mandatory reporting system and is authorized under the Agricultural and Marketing Act of 1946. While the Marketing Act authorizes voluntary reporting, while the Marketing Act that authorizes voluntary reporting was established in 1946, this type of reporting has been around for much longer. A historical fact that I often like to share when presenting this information is that on May 16th of 1913, the then Secretary of Agriculture established what was called the Office of Markets, and that office actually released the very first market report on March 15th, 1915, that covered movement and price information on strawberries out of Hammond, Louisiana. Where all of the mandatory marketing data is submitted electronically, our voluntary market news data is collected by our federal staff of trained market reporters to obtain market information at different market levels and trading points by both telephone and electronic submission. Market News also has working agreements with many individual states where we can utilize their available staff to collect this information as well. The voluntary market reporters also process a high volume of transactions that can reach up to 30 to 35,000 transactions in a given day. And this data is utilized to provide updates to over 1,300 different voluntary market reports and data sets. Market News uses the information it receives to put data out in 3 distinct access points. These include what we refer to as the physical market news reports, which are customized reports that are released many different times per day containing updated data. The data portals, where our users can search, view, and download data sets, and our publicly available APIs that allow users to connect their own IT systems for constant and timely data consumption. The many different market reports that we provide are made available in several different ways. One way is on our actual AMS website. We have the latest copies of all of the market reports that we produce, and those are updated as soon as the reports are released. We also provide customers with archived copies of previously released market news reports and the availability to download those and view them at a separate site. And as we move ahead, we're working on new ways to add specific pages that contain information that are specific to each and every market report to add more clarity and efficiency to the process. So some examples of market reports that we do provide can be found on our AMS website. And as I said before, this is a service that's provided through our market research and analysis. And you can get the USDA market news page here. This is a page where you can connect to any of the different commodity reports that we provide and get the latest copy of each report. Some examples of these can include this, which is actually a mandatory report that takes all of the pork sales transactions we get throughout the day and consolidate them down into one report to provide aggregated price and volume information on many of the different pork products that are sold throughout the day and the information we receive through that mandatory system that are submitted to us electronically. This report is actually published twice a day, where we have a preliminary in the morning and then a final in the afternoon. And reporters are going through all this information as it's being processed to ensure that it's both accurate and timely. Another example of reporting that we do is live auction barn reporting, where we actually have either federal or state reporters at live auction sales for live animals. This report represents a very large sale that we cover in Oklahoma City, where the reporter is actually on site and entering this information as the sales occur and then publishing the report with the aggregated information for our users to utilize to market their own products. This example is a fruit and vegetable report, especially crops report, that is actually showing the rates of trucks that are transporting the product across the country. This is a unique report that captures in time these prices and compare them to previous weeks to give users an idea of how many sales are taking place and at what cost for that transportation in the US. This dairy report is an example of sales information from many different reports that they pull together in a summary report to make it a little easier for users to view the information. A lot of the information in this report could be pulled from many different reports released throughout the week and can give a one-stop shopping view for users to view that particular information. Those are just a few examples of reports that we release. I just wanted to give those examples because there's many unique ways that we report data based on the commodities and the markets that we cover. Another source of information that Market News does provide are online data portals. We have a data portal for the mandatory system that's called Data Mart. That is where users can go get any of the mandatory report information that's been published on the reports and actually download that data and use it for whatever they want for analysis or to track prices of volumes across time. I actually have two voluntary data portals listed here because we're currently in a transition period of over the last few years of building a new system for our voluntary market reporting data. And we still haven't quite completed that process yet, so we still do have data available on our old portal site. A lot of the specialty crops information is still on that site as we transition that to our new My Market News interface and API for that. So one of the other newer things that we've moved to in the last few years is making all of our data available through APIs. As many of these reports move into our new voluntary system, we're making available through an API. And about a year and a half ago, we set up an API for our mandatory pricing data that comes out of that system as well. This has been a very popular feature with our users. And as we have rolled this out, we've gotten a lot of user feedback and provided a lot of updated information to these APIs for our users to get the data they need and as soon as it's released from our system. A lot of the features that we provide from these APIs allow our customers to track when price data and reports are being released so that they can get the information as soon as it's out there. It provides machine-to-machine connections that allow them to set up automated data consumption, especially for some of our larger users that are covering a lot of different commodities. And we also have the ability for them to identify when previously released data has been corrected, so they always have the most up-to-date information available. So moving back to some examples here, this is actually the front page of our Data Mart site. That is where all of the mandatory information can be accessed from the reports. That specific pork report I showed you before is available here in the list of daily pork reports, and it would be right here as the daily negotiated pork report. And there is also instructions for using the mandatory APIs on this page as well. And I will also provide these links later in this slide deck. This is the site of our old portal site. This is the specialty crops piece of the old portal where users are still getting some of this information as we transition into our new site. This is still active, but once we do finish moving all of our data into the new one, we will be retiring this data portal. And then this is the front page of our voluntary site where we house all of the data, the API instructions for the voluntary API, and also this search previous reports link down here will take users to where they can access and download any previously released versions of our physical market news reports. The data portal is actually at this link, or it's a search market news database where users can go in and access that voluntary market report information. As we move forward, we're obviously going to continue working on moving all of our voluntary market news data sets into our newer system and make those available through that My Market News site and publicly on our API. We hope to have that completed by the end of 2022 and then retire our legacy data portal. We're also moving forward with releasing the first version of a mobile app that will allow our users to access our reports and data from mobile devices. And we hope to have all of our information available on that some point next year as well. As I said, this slide deck will be shared after the meeting, so I have included some key contact information and some of our websites that I did go through during the presentation. So if anyone's interested, they can access that or send us any questions you might have over any of the information that I have covered today. And with that, I think we'll be turning it over to Patrick Pecknett of the Foreign Agricultural Service.
Hey, Jason, while Patrick's getting squared away, we do have a question in the chat, and I think you can probably cover it pretty quick. John is interested to know, for the APIs, do you provide any sample code in Python, R, Excel? Otherwise, do you offer some code fragments in your instruction?
We do offer some examples in the JSON format as well as the Excel Power BI format, and we have a lot more available as well that we can send electronically through email for specific searches that people are trying to do.
And I'm guessing if somebody gets a little tangled up and just needs maybe their hand held a little bit, you guys probably are willing to get folks squared away.
Absolutely. If you're having any troubles, the best thing is just send us the query you're trying to use, and we can give you some examples of what should be working for you, and you can try those. But the emails that I have here would be the best contact information for doing that.
Excellent, thanks. We'll have some time for some more questions after Patrick. So Patrick, if you're ready, we'll go ahead and put you on the hot seat.
I am ready, and good morning, everybody. And Marissa's going to be running the slide deck for me. Very happy to be able to spend some time with you all this morning to talk about the data products that FAS offers to our agricultural stakeholders. So Marissa, go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. So I know most of you are familiar with FAS, but I thought it might be helpful to provide just a brief overview of the agency before jumping into the data products that we offer, just to put things into perspective a little bit. FAS is somewhat different than some of the other agencies whose mission is more centered exclusively around providing data. Our mission is to enhance the export opportunities for U.S. agricultural farmers and ranchers. Of course, this is critical because almost or about 20% of U.S. ag production is exported. So FAS negotiates trade agreements and tackles market access issues to keep markets open for our farm products. We conduct a variety of market development programs to enhance demand for U.S. agricultural exports, and we conduct capacity building programs to help developing countries. Our data and our market access activities really go to support and underpin these other three strategic functions of the agency. On to the next slide, please. So within FAS, the Global Market Analysis Program area where I work is really the center of the data and market intelligence activities. GMA has about 60 staff. We're aligned in about 3 divisions, as you can see here. Just over half of our staff are agricultural economists, and another 20% or a little more are crop assessment specialists. So FAS is part of the USDA's economic intelligence system that generates the World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimates Report, which is a principal federal economic indicator. And about half of our GMA staff contribute to the WASDE. Next slide. So our overseas staff is a key component of FAS's market intelligence capability. We have a global network of 98 offices covering 177 countries. In addition to representing USDA and US agriculture overseas, our agricultural attachés and our locally hired staff are our eyes and our ears on the ground in these key countries. Our overseas commodity reporting, which we'll talk about later, is a key input into the WASDE process, as well as into FAS's reports and our data. The reports are also a valuable resource to our ag stakeholders. So next slide. So on this slide, I've listed all of the market intelligence products that we have at FAS. The products along the top are our major major data systems, including the global agricultural trade system, the production, supply, and distribution system, the global agricultural information network, where our overseas reports reside. I'll describe all of these major systems in more detail later in the presentation, but I just want to take a moment and go through some of the other data products that we offer briefly, so you're familiar with those as well. And I'll start with the World Agricultural, World Markets and Trade Reports and our World Agricultural Production Report. Combined, we publish almost 80 of these production and commodity reports each year. Most of these are related to the WASDE and are released on a monthly, quarterly, or biannual basis. We have reports covering grains, oilseeds, cotton, livestock, and dairy, poultry, and various horticultural and specialty crops. While the WASDE provides a broad overview, these reports drill into much greater detail. So if you want to know what's happening in global commodity markets, you should find these reports very helpful. The Agricultural Tariff Tracker is one of our newer information products that provides applied tariff information for trading partners where we have free trade agreements. Then we have the Outlook for U.S. Agricultural Trade, which is jointly published quarterly along with the Economic Research Service. This publication includes an aggregate forecast for U.S. agricultural exports and imports, as well as specific forecasts for major commodities and markets. The quarterly ag export forecast is updated in February, May, August, and November. Our current forecast for fiscal 22 for agricultural exports is $177.5 billion, which is up from $173.5 billion in fiscal 21. Then we have our international agricultural trade reports, which are ad hoc reports that are in addition to our regular publications that highlight developments in commodity markets. We also do IATRs to help support our agricultural trade missions, and more recently, the virtual trade events that FAS has hosted during the COVID pandemic. And then finally, we have our Global Agriculture and Disaster Assessment System that we refer to as GATIS. GATIS is a web-based system that integrates the remotely sensed data streams that we use in our crop forecasting. The system includes precipitation data, soil moisture, vegetation indexes, satellite imagery, and other data. And in addition, GATIS includes real-time data streams that enable the monitoring and impact assessment of disasters such as hurricanes, typhoons, and floods. So next slide, please. So moving on to our major FAS databases, I'll start with GATS. The GATS database houses US Census data for ag imports and exports that FAS has further processed to allow users to easily extract the key ag trade numbers. GATS includes US ag, fishery and forestry trade statistics dating back to 1989. The database is updated monthly as Census releases its trade figures. There's a 2-month lag, which is consistent with the census data. Currently, the latest data in the system is for August, and the data is usually, actually is released weekly from census. I'm sorry, during the first week of the month from census. So the GATS query system is fairly intuitive and straightforward. The database allows users to extract exports and import statistics by country and region, by commodity or groups of commodities or products, and on a monthly or annual basis, or any user-defined period. Users can also access a number of predefined reports that we refer to as PICO reports. Next slide. So here's a data output from the GATS standard query system for ag exports in 2020. In this data run, you can identify the top markets and you can see the year-on-year growth for each destination. The system also has features that will allow you to output this into a nice Excel file or PDF report. Next slide. The next major data system that we have is our production, supply, and distribution system. PSD Online contains the official USDA estimates of production, supply, and distribution of agricultural commodities for the US, as well as key producing and consuming countries. I emphasize official since all of the data in the PSD Online is reviewed and approved by the USDA Interagency Commodity Estimates Committees under the leadership of the World Agricultural Outlook Board. PSD Online contains data covering about 60 commodities and 120 countries. The PSD data is really a series of commodity country balance sheets where supply equals demand. Our commodity analysts and GMA use the information from the reports provided from our global attaches overseas and a wide variety of other information and data, including our export sales report, data from census in our GATS system, and other information to arrive at the PSD estimates. PSD is the database that is behind the USDA WASDE report, as well as FAS's World Markets and Trade reports. Commodities in the system are updated at different intervals, with the field crops being updated every month when the WASDE is published. Other commodities are updated quarterly or twice yearly. This database is very straightforward and simple to use, and it includes extensive help information and FAQs that are provided for the users to understand the data itself. Next slide. So users go to PSD Online when they want information about the supply and demand situation for a given commodity in a given country, or a group of countries, or even globally. In this slide, there's an example of China soybeans of an extract to pull that data. Next slide. So after running the query, you get results that look like this. In the example you see here, you can see the latest data for China, imports at 101 million tons. I can see that the forecast didn't change from September to October. And I can also see that the estimate is about 2 million tons higher than the previous marketing year. In an extract like this, I could include as many countries as I'd like in my query, and I can download or output the data to Excel for further manipulation. I should also note that the PSD Online system has some very basic data visualization capabilities built in. These are located under the graphical query tab that you can see at the top of this screen. Also, within the PSD Online system, you can access release schedules, download CSV files, which would include the entire commodity data set for all the years. And then there's a ton of reference information that's also available there. Next slide. So next up is our GAIN system that houses all of our reports from our ag attaches and our locally employed staff around the world. In 2020, we had approximately 3,100 GAIN reports that were published and available through this GAIN network search engine. Total reports were about 15% higher than the prior year, largely due to a lot of reporting that we were getting on COVID-19 and its impact on the agricultural sector. Reporting on climate change and reports on the EU Farm to Fork strategy are some examples of new issues that were covered in the GAIN reports. So our GAIN reports are highly popular among the FAS data offerings. And we have web stats that our GAIN reports were downloaded over 2.5 million times throughout this calendar year alone. Next slide, please. So there are different categories of GAIN reports, and they all have some different utilities for our ag stakeholders, as you can see on the pie chart that's on the right of this graphic. We have our FAIRS reports, which focus on food import regulations and standards in foreign markets. Our food sector reports, which are more focused on market opportunities for processed products. However, our commodity reporting accounts for the largest share of our GAIN reports. And as I noted earlier, these reports are key input for the WASDE process and generally for our overall market intelligence to help with our trade policy and our marketing efforts. The map at the top of the graphic shows the geographic concentration of the GAIN reporting that we get from around the globe, but these are our scheduled reports. You can see there's a heavy concentration of reporting in places like China and India, out of Asia, as well as Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico in the Western Hemisphere. And that's because these countries are either large competitors that we follow. Commodity reporting requirements and in the GAIN are reviewed annually to ensure that the reporting aligns with changes and developments that we have in global agricultural production and trade. So over 1/3 of FAS's scheduled GAIN reports cover bulk commodities and field crops. The FAIRS reports and our biotech reports are the next largest category, which each account for about 14% of the total reports. And the food sector reports are in third place there, accounting for about 12% of the total published reports. Next slide. So the final data product that I'll cover is our weekly export sales report. And as most of you may know, Congress mandated export sales reporting in 1973 after the Soviet Union made unexpected large purchases of US grain, causing a run-up in food prices. So for the 40 commodities covered under the program, exporters are required by law to report to us their sales and their shipments on a weekly basis, as well as on a daily basis for sales exceeding certain specified quantities. Reporting is required for all the major food grains and feed grains, along with cotton and oil seeds. Beef and pork were the newest commodities added to the program. And the Secretary of Agriculture has the authority to add commodities if USDA and the industry believes there's strong justification to do so. Of course, this would require formal rulemaking with the public comment period. So the actual weekly reports are distributed via the Gov delivery and can also be downloaded from our FAS homepage. We also have a query system where users can extract the specific data they would like for specific commodities and time periods. Information on the daily sales are provided through press releases, and it can also be downloaded from the web, or I'm sorry, available through Gov Delivery. Next slide. So I want to put in a plug for FAS's newest publication that we call the U.S. Agricultural Export Yearbook. The yearbook was first published in June 2020 and includes a statistical summary of our commodity exports to the world and our primary trading partners. It also includes some analysis of the drivers and key issues and market conditions that impacted exports in that year. The report serves as a handy reference for users that are just looking for an annual summary of the trade or a general overview of ag trade issues. Next slide. And finally, I'd just like to note that FAS provides APIs for GATS and PSD as well as export sales to allow users more efficient access to these data resources. So that is all I have. I'll turn it back to you, Joe, for Q&A.
All right, thanks, Patrick. Great. Well, I'm gonna change my view here so I can see everybody. You guys anybody who wants to ask a question is welcome to raise your hand and I'll recognize you and we can put that in front of the speakers. I know we've got one here in the chat. You're also welcome to use the chat if you'd like. So I'll kind of get things started just to see if I can get folks interested in some questions. Jason, I have a question for you if you're ready. Okay. You know, sometimes I see data, for example, in the Wall Street Journal, and it's about cash markets and stuff and of agricultural commodities and other commodities as well. Is that an example, or in many cases, is that an example of a republisher of AMS market news data?
Yeah, I would assume so. We do have contact with them, and I know they do consume a lot of our information as soon as it's released. So that's likely where they're getting it. I couldn't say for sure. Obviously, there's other entities putting information out, but I do know that they consume quite a bit of our information.
Have you seen any particular change in demand or areas in which you've seen increased demand? And I'm thinking about things like organics, for example, in your market news reports.
Yeah, over the past few years, we have made a focus of trying to collect and disseminate more, you know, organic and other specialty marketing products. I worked in eggs quite a bit, where we saw a lot of cage-free, organic, pasture-raised, a lot of different labels, and we've made an attempt to try to get that information. It's difficult to get a lot of it, so a lot of those reports are, if they're released, it's usually only monthly at first until we can get some more information, just because they're not traded as much in a way that we can cover. But any information we get, we definitely put it out there and have it available and have ways to search for it on the sites I mentioned earlier.
I think the thing that's amazing to me as I look at AMS market news data is just it's another reminder of just the breadth and depth of U.S. agriculture and all of the things that are important to keep all of these markets moving forward, whether it's, you know, rail and barge loadings to livestock auctions to, you know, what's happening in terminal markets and fresh fruits and vegetables, just on and on. So
yeah, they're all very unique, which is very great, very good, and gives us a lot of opportunities, and very difficult to build into a consistent system that can deliver that. So we're working hard to try to make that work for everything in a efficient way.
I think our folks on the call can tell that I get excited about all kinds of data. I find the entire the collection that USDA has to be absolutely amazing. And, I'm going to switch over to Patrick, and we do have a question in the chat, Patrick. And so you had made some remarks about the PSD Online. The question is, does PSD Online update every day, every data point after each WASD?
Thanks, Joe. It's an interesting question. So PSD Online is synced to the WASD in the sense that any data that is published in the WASD will match what is in PSD Online. Of course, some of our data sets are not updated every month. The field crops and cotton, grains and cotton, oil seeds are all updated every month with the WASD. That doesn't mean every data point changes. Sometimes the numbers aren't changed from month to month, and so there wouldn't be a change there, but the data would be consistent with the WASD. Other commodities that we have, for example, livestock, are updated on a quarterly basis, and we have others that might be updated only a couple of times a year. But the data is, if there's a change in the WASD, there will be a change in the PSD Online, because the PSD Online feeds the data that's in the WASD. So hopefully that clarifies the relationship there.
And, you kind of touched on a number of linkages between FAS's statistical work and the work at ERS and World Board. And then earlier, you kind of made a comment about capacity building, and I know that's not exactly the wheelhouse of your area, but you want to talk just for a moment about capacity development at FAS? I know there's some linkages to NASS in a few cases.
You're right. That's not exactly my wheelhouse, but that is one of the areas that FAS does a lot of work in, capacity building. We do cooperate and have worked with NASS and other statistical agencies within the department to support the data and statistics capabilities of many countries around the world. We're doing a lot of that work, similar work now, as many countries are interested in our GATIS system to be able to use the geospatial data there to better understand the situation on the ground with their crops, and to understand impacts on disasters and things like that. It's important work because we want the best statistics that are available around the world, and if countries do a better job of understanding their own production, and if they can publish their own data that we can take advantage of, and it's good information, then we all benefit, and the whole world has a better understanding of the global ag situation overall. So it's very important work. Of course, we do development work in all aspects of agriculture, not just statistics. Many might be familiar with our school feeding programs and other development assistance that FAS has, working closely with AID in many cases.
Thanks, Patrick. And Jason, as I recall, AMS has some leadership that you try to do to help develop capacity around market news type reporting, especially in the Western Hemisphere, right?
Yes, we definitely share what we do with a lot of international groups, and work with several that are trying to build their own system similar to ours. But we also have some working agreements with some where we actually publish their data through our system and make that available as kind of a secondary disseminator to them. So,
well, there's a huge value add for, in my belief, and for American producers if there's strong statistical systems around the world, so we have better market intelligence worldwide. I'm looking out. I don't see any hands up, but maybe I just need to slide over here. Any other questions out there, or you're welcome to call from mute. Hey, Kyle.
Hey, Joe. This is Kyle Varner with Senator Stabenow's staff on the Ag Committee. I was going to type this out, but I figured I'd just jump in and ask. Appreciate you guys taking the time to do this briefing today. First of all, Jason, I was wondering, or Joe, I'd be curious. You mentioned or alluded to some of the challenges that AMS Market News has in sort of reporting out the very important information that you do collect in thinner markets or where there's not as much, publicly traded information. Could you speak more to just some of the challenges that AMS has as you're trying to, expand into some of the new, respond to the industry's demand for new market information? You mentioned organics quite a bit, but there seems to be more reliance on AMS market news data for things like for use in like the federal crop insurance program as we try to expand crop insurance to more types of commodities and different specialty crops. A lot of times AMS market news is the most readily available and best data that we have on a lot of more niche markets, perhaps. I mean, that's not the right word, but just wondering if you could just sort of in that context, and I would also add, I think that FSA relied a lot on AMS data for development of the CFAP programs and the coronavirus relief programs and other various assistance that's gone out the door. So what are just some of the general challenges that you have, I guess, in both expanding to new data, but also just keeping some of these other data sets going?
Yeah, that's a great question because, first of all, even with our conventional markets, through consolidation, major companies, less and less players in a lot of these markets, you can take eggs or swine as an example, where you have less companies doing all of these transactions. It becomes difficult because we have to maintain confidentiality without exposing those individuals. So we are kind of forced to look at new ways to track that information as some of those negotiated markets get thinner, covering formula pricing and doing some other things where we're trying to work with them to find new ways to at least, either day to day, week to week, month to month, show how those transactions are changing. That's a big challenge and one that we're constantly working on. As far as the smaller markets that we refer to, organics or cage-free, for example, a lot of those are contracted pricing where you don't see a lot of negotiating because you don't have a lot of extra product on the market. Getting customers to share that information is probably the biggest hurdle. It's hard to blame them for that. Obviously, they have interests as well. But we try to work with them, and we've come a long way with organics. It's been several years. I'm getting a lot more information on that, but it's just getting in there and getting them to trust us and provide us enough data to where even if it's a month or every other month statistic, we can start putting it out there and they can start seeing the benefit that they can get from having that information available. Just like you said, if there's no consistent price, how do we insure these products? How do we, show them or give them loans over time based on what these markets do if we don't have that information? So the biggest challenge in the new ones is just getting in there and getting enough people to share the information and understand what we do.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think from NASS's standpoint, it's hard to characterize individual things, but, I think across the statistical system or across, the collection, we don't want to duplicate efforts. And so I think that when we're talking about something that's fairly niche, for lack of a better word, or rare, if we're going to producers, that becomes kind of hard to find, right? If you're looking for folks like, say, marketing, organic green beans, or something like that, you have to find somebody, who's growing green beans this year and who's, marketing them, organically, for example. And so it can become kind of a rare event. And so I think in a lot of ways, for some of these things, AMS can capture data, through some, point of sale where there's somebody who is, trading in those items or making a market in them. And so anyway, that is just sort of a challenge when you get into some things that are fairly rare, or the number of handlers are not very many, because obviously we need to make sure that we practice statistical disclosure avoidance, and we can't publish data that would identify or lead one with some confidence to identify an individual respondent. I see John Newton's hands up. John?
Thanks so much for doing this, Joe, Jason, and Patrick. Really appreciate it. I've got two questions. First, what I really like about the AMS data, especially on the livestock side, is you give a range, and then you give, there's an average price that's available as well. And I don't know if anyone's on here that can address anything with respect to the National Dairy Product Sales Report that's also conducted through AMS. But that only gives a specific price. And is there any capacity or ability to provide a range of prices that are observed on those weekly dairy products that are collected? So that'll be my first question. Then I have a follow-up.
I'm not sure we have anybody with the mandatory dairy reporting on here right now, but we definitely could follow up with you, John, on that. And I know we have your contact information. I could have Lori reach out to you and give you some background on how they report that data. I honestly have never worked with it, and I would be lying if I tried to tell you how it all works. So, but we'll definitely have her reach out to you.
Thanks so much. And then my second, it's not really a question, but more of a comment. I see that Mike Lynch is on here. And I just wanted to thank Mike for all of his years of service. He's been an excellent resource for me throughout my career. And I understand that early November, Mike is going to be retiring. So I just wanted to thank him for always being a great resource to me. And I'm sure many others on the phone call as well. So thank you.
Hear, hear. Well, I think our time is about up, but we've got room for another question. Oh, there's Mike. Yeah.
Thanks for the comment, John. Appreciate it.
I think our time is about up, and we want to keep everything on time. We probably have a time for one last question, if there is one. Well, if not, I want to thank everybody for joining us and pitch an advertisement or two here. We will be posting the slides and the recording this afternoon, or hopefully by this afternoon, to the link that's shown here. And I think Marissa has already put it in the chat as well. So you might want to capture that before we drop off today. It also has the recordings and slides from last week. And then I want to advertise it next week. And I think at this time, oh, here, thank you, Marissa. We'll be back with FPAC. We'll have representatives of the Farm Service Agency, NRCS, and RMA to talk about their data products that sort of result from their program of activities. And so I hope that you'll be able to join us then, and we look forward to seeing you in a week from now. So with that, we'll bring it to close. Thanks so much.